So I was on Instagram and I saw this post from Fu Community. It was titled Mexicans vs. Chicanos, in reference to an upcoming boxing match between Canelo Álvarez, who is Mexican, and David Benavidez, who is Chicano. This graphic isn't meant to be taken seriously. It kind of reminds me of when the US math team beat China, which was funny because our math team consisted of Chinese Americans. Suck it, China, we beat you using your own descendants. But in the comment section for this post, there were a lot of hot takes that nobody asked for. I saw none other than Swamp Stories in the comments saying Canelo's heritage is colonizers. Ooh. This might be a surprise to people, but I actually studied anthropology in college. One of the most useless classes you could take. I took it to increase my GPA because I was so into it. Geography too. But before the Spanish arrived in the New World, there were wars. There were pre-Columbian wars. If you look into the Toltec Empire, there were a lot of bloodshed within the indigenous community. Before the Spanish, the Aztecs had a complex, urban civilization, understanding mathematics and astronomy the same way Europeans did. But the Spanish had an advantage because of iron and steel. Iron and steel didn't exist in the New World. They were using crossbows. And again, these weapons weren't for decoration. They used it on each other before the Spanish came. The main advantage the Spanish had, though, were wheeled vehicles being pulled by horses. There were no horses in this continent before the Europeans arrived. The Spanish actually mixed with the local population, and once Mexico had the same advantage with vehicles and weapons, they were able to declare independence from Spain. Over 90% of indigenous Americans died from disease in North America. However, in Latin America, the mixed race population had a better resistance to smallpox. If it wasn't for the paternal European heritage, they would have had a similar fate to the indigenous people in the US, because they had no resistance to old world diseases like smallpox, similar to how Europeans have less resistance to malaria compared to West Africans. Here's a source for that. But to this day, most Latin Americans have Spanish heritage, usually around 50% in Mexico. Places like Argentina are 80% European. I thought this was interesting, but indigenous people don't have much facial hair, but according to statistics, they have the highest testosterone levels on Earth. Isn't that surprising? These maps prove that there's not really a correlation between the two. Whenever I tell people this, they don't believe it, and I'm sure people in the comments are gonna challenge that. Anyway, calling Canelo Álvarez a colonizer is stupid because most Latin Americans have European ancestry. Watch one of those DNA test videos if you don't believe me.
Oh my gosh, I'm 71.9% European.
44% European.
The thing about Canelo is he's actually part Irish. Ireland never colonized Mexico. In the 1840s, there was a war between the United States and Mexico, and over 600,000 Irish people immigrated to Mexico and fought the US with the Mexicans. Now, why did they want to fight the US? It was because Mexico was Catholic and the US was Protestant. There was also discrimination against Irish people and Mexicans in the US over being Catholic, and that's where the bond came from.
I put my hand on my heart and I will say I love the Mexican people. I love the Mexican fans. You know, since I was a child, I grew up watching Mexican fighters. They were always stylistically the fighters I enjoyed watching, and I like to replicate that and fight like a Mexican myself. And it's an honor to fight again on another Mexican holiday. You know, I'm very grateful for that. The Irish have a history similar to the Mexican people. You know, and there's a lot of Irish people went to Mexico, you know, helping out with the war with the Mexican people, you know, and I always said if I fight Canelo, you know, he looks more Irish and I look more Mexican than he does, you know, so it's going to be fun.
And Irish people originally had black hair. Pirates from Scandinavia with blonde hair raped and pillaged coastal cities in Ireland, and the genetic combination of black hair and blonde hair created red hair. So if you have red hair, then you're probably related to a pirate. It makes sense that Canelo is a good fighter, having both indigenous and Irish ancestry. There were also a lot of Italians, Lebanese, and Germans who immigrated to Latin America. They weren't colonizers, they were just immigrants. Calling a white Mexican a colonizer is just plain stupid. It's like calling an American immigrant a colonizer. And Canelo's family actually fought for Mexico. Even if Canelo is a direct descendant of Christopher Columbus, why does he have to answer for that? Do we hold all Germans accountable for the invention of the Volkswagen? If your parents went to jail, does that mean you should go to jail? And here's where it gets crazy. I looked up Swamp Storiez to see what he looks like, and I was surprised that he was claiming to be Mexican because he totally sounds like a white American. It's not like he rolls his R's, he's probably never had a lotte, and allegedly, this is who Swamp Storiez is.
You're fucking a white male! So? You're a white man! White people don't know what white people.
No, but actually, it's believed that this is who Swamp Storiez is.
Swamp Storiez. Man, you expose yourself, bruh. You see what I'm saying? You expose yourself, dude. You know what I mean? You did a post and delete. We know who you are. Cemetery, the rapper from Granite, California, bro. You see what I'm saying? You did a post and delete. You slipped up.
The more regular life stuff, and I'm only about this ever, so, you know. But I knew he was hella good, so I was like, bro, you should really do this, bro. You're gonna be really big, bro. Like, it's super fire when you do it.
This is the first episode of Swamp Storiez, okay?
Dale projects are one of the largest public housing communities in the country, and the area is notorious for murder. Rappers Yada, Lil Yace, and K.E. are the biggest representatives of the project.
It's super fire when you do it, yada, yada, yada. It's super fire when you do it, yada, yada, yada. And one person's really into it, and the other one's like, it's a hobby, so.
Right down the street from them is where you can find bubbling rappers Lil Bean and Zay Bang. The Towerside projects are literally on the same street as their opposition, and that is what makes...
That's that.
And I found this video from Point and Shoot, and it said that Swamp Storiez is actually a white dude who makes emo music. It's possible he's part Mexican, but he doesn't have a Mexican name. There's no way this guy is more than 10% indigenous. I'm darker than him. And there are many sources saying that this is Swamp Storiez, including Adam22. Their voices are exactly the same. Swamp Storiez accidentally posted a picture of himself on Instagram, and people found out his identity. Swamp would later say, "Oh, this isn't me, but unless you do a face reveal showing you're a different person, I'm gonna have to assume this is you." People used to assume I was Tyler Trappy, and I cleared it up by calling him and making the call public. People are saying Swamp Storiez is Cemetery, and it's interesting that neither Cemetery or Swamp Storiez do interviews, because if they did, we would hear their speaking voice and make the connection that they're the same person. You can do an interview and still be anonymous. That's what Hell Ya Sign did. Swamp Storiez has made no effort to clear this rumor up. It makes perfect sense that they're the same person, though. Now, Swamp is obviously really Americanized. He's not secure about his culture, and he wants to assert that he's actively a part of it by accusing Canelo Álvarez of not being Mexican. He leaves another comment saying, Canelo is white. First of all, you're white. Second, there's nothing wrong with being white. That app you're using, Instagram, was created by this guy. YouTube was created by Chad and Steve. One of them looks like this. So if you hate white people, get off YouTube and get off Instagram. Personally, I love everyone, especially people in wheelchairs. I don't have time to be prejudiced. I get to know someone before I judge them. And by the way, why does Swamp Storiez try to hide his identity? Who's actually trying to roll up on him? It comes off a little soft considering Trap Lore Ross shows his face. I mean, Ross isn't scared. Aside from that, Swamp Storiez does make decent content. I remember watching his video about Mac Dre, the Denver one too, obviously. We all say stupid things when we're drunk. For a second I thought this was a fan account or maybe he got hacked, but nah, he really did say this. Anyway, what do y'all think? I'm out.